All right, so get this. Today we're deep diving into Brazil, but not the Brazil you see on postcards, you know.
Right.
You sent over a ton of articles on maps, and honestly, it's like someone just handed me a decoder ring for the entire country.
It's amazing how Brazilians are using maps for so much more than just like getting from point A to point B.
Seriously.
We're talking tracking deforestation in the Amazon, getting a handle on consumer behavior in a market, bigger than all of Europe, even designing cities for the future. It's all happening.
I'm looking at these articles, and honestly, it's making me rethink the whole idea of a map. Like when I picture the Amazon, it's this massive, dense jungle, right?
Yeah.
But to actually manage an area that huge, dealing with things like illegal logging, that's got to be almost impossible without some serious tech.
Oh, absolutely. And you've hit on a key point there. One of the articles mentioned that right now, satellite imagery is helping Brazil catch something like 95% of illegal logging in the Amazon. Like, as it's happening.
Wow.
It's incredible. They're catching a tree being cut down from space. That level of technology, it's not even just about catching the bad guys. It's essential for protecting the rainforest itself.
95%. That's way more impactful than I would have imagined. But these maps, it's not just about catching the bad guys, right? They're actually being used to help, like, animals thrive in the rainforest.
Oh, definitely. One article put it as, get this, creating jaguar highways.
Jaguar highways, okay.
Sounds kind of funny, I know, but it's actually a whole network of wildlife corridors. These corridors, they connect different parts of the rainforest that would otherwise be isolated so animals, even big predators like jaguars, can move freely.
Ah.
It's crucial for genetic diversity, keeps the whole ecosystem healthy.
So it's like these maps are, what, stitching the ecosystem back together?
Yeah, you could say that.
But it's not all rainforests and jaguars, right?
Yeah.
Some of these articles were talking about using maps to track things like pollution. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's another thing. They're creating what they call pollution heat maps. These maps highlight the areas with, like, the worst air and water quality.
Okay.
For a country like Brazil, growing so quickly, all this industry and agriculture, it's crucial. Being able to see that data, it means they can target environmental regulations, make sure that all that growth doesn't come at the cost of, people's health.
It's like giving a health checkup to the entire country, spotting problems before they, become too big to handle.
Yeah.
Speaking of health, some of these articles talked about using maps for, business, to target consumers and all that. Seems like a bit of a leap.
It does, but think about it. Brazil's market is huge and spread out. They're using this thing called market demography to map out not just where people are, but their age, income, even what they like to buy.
Wow.
It means businesses can target their marketing perfectly, make sure their products actually make sense for the people living in a certain area, even just decide where to open new stores.
So instead of guessing what people want, businesses have this map-powered crystal ball.
Pretty much. And all that data is especially important because online shopping and home delivery are so big there.
Oh, right.
One article was saying how delivery companies are using real-time traffic data on their maps to plan the fastest routes, especially in those megacities like Sao Paulo where traffic is, insane.
It all connects, doesn't it? From jaguars in the Amazon to getting a pizza delivered faster in Sao Paulo, all thanks to maps. What else are these maps showing us about Brazil?
Get this, real estate. People are using maps to decide where to live, where to buy or sell property. They can look at the demographics of a neighborhood, crime rates, how close it is to schools, parks, transportation, everything.
That's next level house hunting. I'm seeing a theme here. It's like maps are giving people in Brazil this whole new way to understand, to navigate their world.
You're right, and that's even true when it comes to education. Forget those old maps and textbooks. Students in Brazil are using interactive maps now, exploring the Amazon virtually, diving into history, even analyzing population changes.
So instead of just reading about the Amazon, they can practically go there.
Exactly.
These articles also mention archaeology. Are we talking digging up dinosaurs in Brazil now?
Not quite dinosaurs, but something just as cool. They're using maps to uncover Brazil's history. One article I read talked about researchers using old maps to find a lost indigenous village. Imagine that.
Wow.
A whole chapter of history just rediscovered because of a map.
It's like these maps are time machines. And I'm guessing that kind of mapping helps us understand where people are living today too, right?
Exactly. By looking at where people live on a map, researchers, city planners, they can see where the growth is happening and anticipate what's needed. New schools, hospitals, public transit, all that.
So we're going from jaguar highways to ancient ruins, and it's all connected by maps. But it's not all sunshine and discoveries, is it? These sources also mention disaster management, which in a country as diverse as Brazil, I imagine that's a big deal.
You're telling me floods, landslides, droughts, wildfires, you name it. That's where maps go from like informative to absolutely crucial. We're talking about saving lives.
Okay, now you've got me interested. What are they doing with maps in these disaster situations?
Imagine, right, a wildfire, but we're talking the Amazon here, a massive wildfire. And it's not just about getting firefighters there, it's about getting them to the exact right spot as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Knowing how the fire is going to move, maybe even evacuating whole communities, that's where maps, especially ones that use real-time data from satellites, weather models, that's crucial stuff.
So maps basically become a lifeline in those situations, guiding the response, even the recovery afterward.
Exactly. And it's not just about reacting after a disaster happens either. They're using these maps to prevent them in the first place. Like,
Right.
Brazil has a lot of landslides, right? Especially in the mountains, places with tons of rain. So by looking at the landscape, rainfall data, even deforestation, because when you cut down trees, slopes can collapse. They can actually see which areas are most at risk and take steps to, make them safer.
That's incredible. It's like they're using maps to, outsmart nature itself. But let's shift gears a bit. These articles also mention how maps are shaping the future of cities in Brazil. I mean, cities like Sao Paulo are already massive. Imagining them growing even more is, well, kind of mind-boggling.
It's a huge challenge, yeah, but also a huge opportunity. Think about it, right? As those cities grow, they need more housing, more roads, businesses, everything. But you don't want to create traffic nightmares, more pollution, put too much stress on resources,
Right.
Maps are essential for finding that balance.
So it's more than just drawing lines and saying, okay, here's where the new highway goes.
Exactly. One article, I think it was about Rio, talked about how they're using maps to analyze traffic, where the bad spots are, and then they can test out solutions, new bus routes, bike lanes, all that virtually before they even start digging.
Wow.
It's about making smarter decisions, using the data to get people and goods moving smoothly through the city.
Like a perfectly conducted symphony of urban planning, but instead of a baton, it's a map. But it can't all be concrete and buildings, right?
Yeah.
There was also talk about green spaces, parks, that kind of thing, and how important that is for cities.
Oh, absolutely. Parks aren't just a luxury. They're crucial, especially in a big city. Reduces stress, cleans the air, even makes property values go up. There was a study about that. So Brazilian cities are using maps to make sure that even as they grow, they don't lose that connection to nature.
So how does that work? Are they just like circling an area on a map and saying, all right, park goes here?
It's a lot more detailed than that, thankfully. They're analyzing population density, how close people are to existing parks, even the types of trees that grow in different areas.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out exactly where those green spaces will make the biggest difference.
Creating a whole urban tapestry with green threads woven throughout. Speaking of weaving, this next bit, transportation and logistics, that seems especially key in a country as geographically massive as Brazil.
Absolutely. We're talking bigger than the entire continental US here. Moving people and goods across that kind of distance, it's a constant challenge. And maps, especially with real-time data, predictive stuff, they're not just navigational tools anymore. They're the backbone of how everything moves.
Give me an example. How are they making transportation smarter in Brazil?
Well, take trucking, for example. Tons of goods are transported by truck, but that means traffic, pollution, all that. Now some companies are using GPS tracking, combined with really sophisticated mapping software, to find the best routes, save fuel, even monitor their drivers to make sure they're being safe.
So it's not just about getting things delivered faster, it's about making the whole system safer and more sustainable too.
Exactly.
But it's not all about big rigs and highways. These articles also mention public transport, how maps are changing things in cities.
Oh yeah, millions of people rely on buses and trains, but it can be a nightmare, right? Crowded, unreliable, hard to figure out. But now, with maps that show you exactly where the bus is, how bad the traffic is, even how crowded it is.
It's like a personal guide through the urban jungle.
Exactly.
But we're not done yet, are we? There's still more to uncover about how Brazil's putting these maps to good use.
Oh yeah, we haven't even touched on healthcare, fighting crime, all of that. Maps are a powerful tool, and Brazil's using them to really improve people's lives.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Let's dive into that. So before we took a break, we were talking about how maps are changing transportation, but you mentioned healthcare. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around how that even works.
It's a surprising connection, right? But picture this. You're in charge of public health in Brazil, and suddenly, boom, dengue fever outbreak. That's spread by mosquitoes, by the way. How do you stop it?
Well, first thought, I'd be calling every mosquito control company I could find.
Of course, but knowing where to target those efforts, that's key. You don't want to be wasting time and resources on areas where the risk isn't as high, right? That's where maps come in.
Okay, I'm listening.
So they map out all the reported dengue cases, but also the environmental stuff, like where there's standing water, because that's mosquito breeding heaven. And boom, you can see the hot spots, know exactly where to focus your efforts.
So it's like a strategic battle plan against disease with maps as your tactical guide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about reacting after the fact either. One of the articles talked about using this kind of analysis to predict outbreaks before they even happen.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Right. They look at mosquito populations, weather patterns. More rain means more mosquitoes. Obviously, even things like travel patterns, where people are going, and they can get a pretty good idea of where dengue is most likely to pop up next.
So they're basically predicting the future of disease using maps.
Mm.
That's incredible. But we're not just talking about fighting mosquitoes here, are we? What about those really urgent medical situations?
You mean emergency response? And yeah, that's another area where maps are becoming essential. Think about it. Every second counts when it's a life or death situation.
Absolutely.
Well, in Brazil, they're taking real-time traffic data, putting it on a map, and using that to get ambulances where they need to be faster.
Makes sense.
The system, it's incredible. It can even factor in road closures, accidents, even which hospitals have the equipment and specialists available.
It's like a GPS, but for saving lives, finding the fastest way through all the chaos.
Exactly. And this tech, it's not just for big cities either. Out in the Amazon, where getting medical help can be really tough, they're using maps to coordinate those emergency flights, guide helicopters to remote villages, even connect patients with doctors remotely through video calls.
Wow. So maps are bridging the gap between some of the most remote areas and cutting-edge medicine.
You got it.
You know, earlier you mentioned something about crime, and I'm still curious about that. How do maps help with something as, I don't know, unpredictable as crime?
So there's this thing, right? It's called crime mapping.
Wow.
Basically, police departments, they take all the crime data they have and they analyze it, looking for patterns.
Patterns, okay.
Yeah, like, are there certain areas where crime is really high? Are there times of year when it spikes? That kind of thing. And once they can see those patterns, they can actually allocate their resources way more effectively.
So instead of just reacting to crime, they can try to get ahead of it.
Exactly. And it's not even just about catching criminals. By understanding why crime happens in certain areas, like is it poverty, lack of jobs, maybe even just bad city planning, they can start to address the root causes and build safer communities for everyone.
So we've gone from jaguars in the Amazon to predicting diseases to fighting crime, and the common thread through all of it is, get this, maps. It's like they've become this essential tool for understanding, for navigating, for actually improving life in Brazil.
It's true, and what I think is so fascinating is that Brazilians are using maps not just to make sense of their present, but to actually build a better future.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, that's what I'm left thinking about, you know? It's not just about lines on paper or images on a screen. It's about the power of information, the power to look at the world in a whole new way, and to use that knowledge to make real, positive change.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
A huge thanks to our listener for sending in these thought-provoking articles. It just goes to show you never know where a deep dive will take us. Until next time, keep exploring.